Hi, my name is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I'm Vice President of the Theosophical Order of Service. I've been doing legacy interviews because we want to know who our Theosophists are, and also if whenever they pass away or leave or go into the different dimension, we want the people in the next generations to be able to know who we were. So this morning, I'm very excited to introduce to you Mary Abdill. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Anne. Good to be here.
Oh, so glad to be here. I'm wondering if you would tell people, where were you born? Where did you start this journey?
I was born in Allegheny Hospital in downtown Pittsburgh, but grew up north of Pittsburgh up in the mountains.
A
And
mountaineer, huh? Well, and where are you living now?
I'm living in Midtown Manhattan.
Well, that's a big distance between that's a different kind of life for sure, from a mountain life to a urban life.
People took bets on how long I would last in New York City. The longest was about 3 or 4 months. They
Oh,
all lost.
and how long have you been there?
Moved here in '69.
Oh my. Okay, so you made it longer than expected. Oh, well, let's see. I understand you're not retired. So what is it that you do with your time besides study theosophy?
Well, I I teach computer programming and I play in a variety of different music venues. I lead I lead two volunteer dance bands for dancing, for contra dance bands. And what else? And I'm just going through piles and piles of stuff here.
Well,
So,
you had told me that you were doing some kind of computer boot camp. What's that about?
well, these big companies have mainframe computers and they want their employees to learn uh, to maintain and update the programs that are already written in COBOL, DB2, CICS, MQ, IMS. And so this boot camp is going to be teaching all of that, plus, of course, TSO, and which is different from TOS, and just MVS in general.
But yeah, that's something we haven't heard too much about, mainframe and COBOL. That seems to go by the way. But from talking to you, you said it's coming, making a comeback now.
It's huge, and a lot of people don't realize it when they write their Java programs that the web services that they're using are a lot of them written in CICS COBOL,
Hmm. Okay.
but they don't know it. It just works.
Right. Okay, we're going to switch a conversation again and go back to when you, let's see, you were born in the mountains, and were you raised in any kind of religion, any specific kind of religion,
Presbyterian.
Presbyterian? Do you feel like that helped or hurt your spiritual journey?
It helped me study the Bible, but I was a terror in the Sunday school classes because I would question everything.
Sounds like a typical theosophist, huh?
I
It, budding theosophists want to know, why is that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, did your parents' religious beliefs influence you?
I think more my parents' way of living influenced me.
And how was that?
Well, to be helpful to people, to um, to be kind to people. I was the oldest of 7 kids, and
Well,
so I also got a lot of experience raising my younger brothers. And as a result, I became um, a desired babysitter for the entire block, the whole area. So starting at 11 years old, I was babysitting infants.
wow.
It's kind of illegal now, but
Yeah, well, that wouldn't happen now, but yes. So it sounds like your parents left you a legacy of compassion and kindness and generosity and service. So were you able to, do you remember questioning your parents about religion? Like, why is
I
this?
was I was a terror at the Sunday lunchtime table because I would always question this. I would rehash the sermon and ask questions about it. I was a
Oh,
terror.
that's great. I mean, it's great that you were able to do that. Some people are in families that will not allow questioning at all. So kudos to your family for that. That's amazing. Well, can you tell us a little about your spiritual search, your journey, maybe your metaphysical journey, how you got from there to here?
Well, probably sometime when I was about 12 or 13, I was really doubting that God existed. So I thought, well, I'll pray to God and I'll ask God to send me a sign that she exists. And so I prayed and nothing happened. And I said, okay, you've had it. I'm an agnostic. And then I moved to New York City and I got involved with Zen. And I found Zen to be extremely, extremely powerful. In fact, after one of the Zendo sittings, I walked out and I wasn't even touching the ground. I was walking above the ground. It was amazing how powerful it was. That was all before I met Ed. And then I met Ed, and he talked about this wonderful meditation that was happening on Wednesday nights before the TS meeting. And I said, I want to come. And he said, well, it's for members only. I said, well, maybe you can make an exception. So he did. And we walked in. Dora Kunz was, of course, the meditation leader. And being the gentleman, Ed let me walk in the room first. And she looked up at me and she said, who is this? In her usual. And I like was ready to turn tail and run. But Ed introduced me and then she said, oh, okay. So we came in and I sat down and her meditations were so powerful. They were so powerful.
Oh,
You could feel the circle of light going around the room. You could practically see it. And then when we sent healing, you could kind of see the energy come together for the circle. It was always a circle. Dora always meditated in a circle, a single circle, not a double or triple circle. The energy would come in and then just go in the direction of the person that you were sending the healing to. So that was the big thing.
that was amazing. I'm going to interrupt you just for a minute. For people that are listening to this, they may not know that Mary was married to Ed Abdill, our beloved Ed, who recently went on to his next adventure. But he's played a very big part of in the Theosophical Society as well. And there is a video interview with Ed. So you started going to the TS meeting. Well, you went to that meeting. Did you continue to go to the meetings, or how did that progress?
I continued going to the meetings and I joined the Theosophical Society in New York. And after a while, I got stuck being president for a while.
So
And
did you join it? Was that like in the early, it was like 1970-ish or something like that? Is that when you joined, or before?
in the 1970s, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fascinating. Well, along that way, I think that I may be wrong, but didn't you and Ed travel some and teach in different places around the world?
Yeah, Ed was invited to be a speaker internationally. So he was invited to speak in New Zealand, Australia, India, Austria, in England, Brazil, of course, Canada, um, all around across the United States. And because I was married to him, I got to go with him. So for most of those travels, I traveled with him. And eventually I started um, making PowerPoint slides to match his talks. And I really enjoyed making those PowerPoints. So I got better and better at it. One of the things I miss now is making more slides for him because I
Oh,
did a lot of those. Learned a lot from just, he would give me his written notes for his talk, and then I would put the slides together.
I think I've seen some of your slides. I didn't know they were yours, so, but yeah, that's great. That,
Ed had no computer ability at all except for email and Facebook.
oh yeah. That's right. Well, you are great. Y'all were yin and yang for sure. Kind of in the opposite direction with you having all this computer skill, and he being more on a different astral plane, maybe.
Well, he was definitely, his degrees in English and in Latin American studies, he was really good with words. So whenever I would be unsure what the word was for something or how a joke went, I would give him a couple of words and then he would fill out the rest of it. And we were sort of a team. I would prompt him and he would go take the bit and run.
Oh, that's great. I love that. This synergy that the two of you had. That is wonderful, and I know that it's difficult not to have that going on now. I'm glad it sounds like you still lead a very active life, and kudos to you for that. I'm going to ask you if, let's say, so is there anything specifically in the theosophical teachings or anything that you've learned that have been more powerful in your life? Or were you already a theosophist and when you joined, you already were doing that stuff? Or have you grown or any because of your theosophical studies?
The meditations, I think, are the most powerful. Because I grew up in a scientific family, I'm pretty much evidence driven. So when I read about all these different things in the Theosophical Society, it's interesting, but unless I've had some sort of experience that makes it real to me, it's just something that's interesting. But I've had a lot of very real experiences, so I know that there's definite possibility for these things being a reality, and it's fascinating to learn about these different things. But I mean, if you start looking at the rounds and the races, I'm not, you
Me either.
know.
I know some people that know that up and down, and it's like, good for them. Translate, please. Translate that for me. And I love that. For me, I'm the same way, Mary. I think there are probably a lot of us closet people who like the direct experience and the study. If we find something that's interesting, then that's fun to look at. But the real work, I think, is the inner work. I think that Ed taught meditation, right? I remember him sending me some meditation things.
Ed taught a lot of meditation classes, workshops. Um, and before he became really invalid, I guess, we would have a meditation every morning here in the living room. And I had a office worker, so the three of us would sit here and meditate every morning.
So would that be for a half an hour, or 15 minutes, an hour? How long did they last? Or
Never more than 20 minutes, probably
okay.
more like 15. Ed was not big on long meditations. In fact, it was really interesting because, and it took me a while to figure this one out. As soon as I would suddenly get this integration in the meditation, it's like a turning point. I think Dora called it a turning point. And you suddenly, everything was like integrated and you were suddenly one with the outside. That's when Ed would stop it. And I'd say, wait, Ed, you can't stop it there. This is the best part. And you just stopped it. So,
I call that the dessert. You put in the work to settle the mind down, and finally you get to the sweet spot. Yeah, they say it takes at least 20 minutes to get there.
well, I think Ed could get there in about 5, but he seemed to know when I got there and just stopped the meditation. It was incredible. So we talked about that.
Well, I know that you're very involved in his life, and he wrote some books. Did you edit and work with him on the books that he wrote?
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
you're integral part of that practice as well. Were there any living teachers, and you did mention Dora, that influenced you in theosophy or any of the spiritual?
well,
Just
certainly Dora. Dora was incredible. in her, not only the way she led meditations, but she was also a therapeutic touch healer. Of course, she started the therapeutic along with Dolores Krieger. And Dora, there was one time I had horrible, horrible, horrible menstrual cramps. And Ed said, Dora, will let Dora work on you. So what did Dora do? She goes and she works on my head. I thought to myself, that's not where the pain is.
Mhm.
But she took the pain away. Um, you know, several times Dora has treated me, and it was really incredible how fast the relief came. I've always been in pain. My body has not been very happy with this physical world. Since I was a kid, I've always 100% of the day been in pain. So I kind of learned, to deal with it. But Dora was able to reduce it a lot.
Was that structural pain, like because of your spine, or was it arthritis, or what kind of pain is that?
Oh, you name it, it was there.
Okay. Well,
From headaches to back pains to hip pains to joint pains to just being,
well, that's great that she could help and help relieve that pain. We do have a legacy of healing, even before Dora and Dolores, and that was with Olcott, who was, quite the healer. So we acknowledge the power of that energy transfer to heal the physical body. I'm glad
well,
that
I have
helped you
to say
some.
that I'm not old enough to have known Olcott. I may be ancient, but I'm not that old.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that we have a legacy, that it began really in the very beginning. Olcott was working with the healing, which he did put down at one point, but I always kind of connect those two, with Dora and Olcott. Maybe
Yeah,
she got little whispers in her ear from him, from the other plane,
probably did.
So one of the cornerstones of Theosophy is service, and I understand that you do a lot of volunteer work. Let's first look at what you're with the Scottish dancing. Maybe you could tell me about that.
Well, I started international dancing in college when my roommate said, "Hey, I think have fun with this." Came to this New York City and found the international group. And then one night there wasn't any international. I thought I wanted to do something, so I found the Scottish group and took to it, and that's where I met Ed, Scottish country dancing.
Oh,
So we were dance partners before we were married partners.
oh, that is so cool. And then y'all went on to lead the dancing.
Well, we became teachers, which is in the Scottish tradition, it's a whole huge certification process.
Oh,
And the woman, Dr. Jean Milligan, came over and we had to perform in front of her. We had to show teaching in front of her. We had to do written exams to become teachers. It was quite a rigorous process to become teachers, and we both passed and became fully certified Scottish country dance teachers. Now, that's not a volunteer. Scottish country dance teachers do get paid, not a lot. I mean, you get paid maybe $15 for teaching an hour, or 2 hours, but they where I have moved on into is in the music. And a lot of the music that I do now is volunteer.
and in what
Well,
capacity are you?
I lead two dance bands, and the one is the Long Island Traditional Music Association, Litma Contra Dance Band. In fact, I'm leading the rehearsal this Saturday. And I also lead the Contrapolitans, which is a dance band a community band that plays here in New York City a couple of times a year. I'm also play with several other community bands, like in Princeton and for the Anglopolitans. And different groups. So the music has been for me a wonderful way to connect with the world. It's the experience of going out and sharing and playing with people.
What do you play? What do you play? What's your instrument?
There's two instruments that I mainly play now. One is concertina, which is like a little accordion squeeze box, and the other is the piano. So tonight I will be playing for a dance, a Scottish dance, and I'll be playing piano. They
Wow.
actually have a grand piano over there, so I don't have to lug my keyboard.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, dancing and music are both language of the gods. I mean, there's it's a sacred language and it's very spiritual. So your avocation and your spiritual life, they go right together.
I want to say one thing about the music. One time, Ed and I danced in the New Year, and the next morning was a Sunday morning, and there was no way we were going to dance in the New Year up in Westchester and then come back and get up in time for Ed to do the service, the Liberal Catholic Church service the next morning. So canceled that Sunday morning and had an afternoon benediction. And I was playing a keyboard, the organ then, there was an electric organ. And as I was playing, the music went through my fingers into the keys, and from the keys, the music went out. You could see the music going out in streams from my fingers into the room. And it was amazingly powerful. And as I said, the music streamed out through my fingers, through the keys, through the sound, into the room. And it was like these streams that were going into the room. And afterwards, a number of people commented on how powerful that service was. And Lynn Trotman's husband, Tim, even said he could see the energy coming out of Ed's fingers when he was doing the blessing. It was just an amazingly powerful service. And this was after we'd been up most of the night. So I don't know, maybe a lack of sleep or something, but it was quite powerful. I've never had that experience before. I definitely have had that experience of oneness with the people and just an integration, but not actually seeing it like that again.
Thank you for sharing that. It's almost like I could feel the energy when you were talking about it. So tell me a little bit more about your involvement with the Liberal Catholic Church.
I never became a member. I'm not a ritual person. Ed used to read poetry to me when we were dating, and I would always say, that's wonderful and wonderful. And poetry doesn't mean much to me because it's like, if you want to say something, just tell me. Just don't give me all these symbols and all these allusions, Just tell me how it is. So ritual isn't something. I'm aware that of the energy that it creates. There's a power in the ritual services, the Episcopalian, the Catholic, there's a real power there. But I'm not into the ritual part that creates that power. I just sort of receive it and experience it.
Well, now he was a priest in the Liberal Catholic Church,
Yes.
Ed was. And so did he have a community that he spoke with regularly?
The St. Michael's Liberal Catholic Church met every Sunday, and it used space at the Theosophical Society on 53rd Street.
And so did he talk, was he the leader for the Sunday service?
When I met him, yes. Before that, there were other leaders.
Did you go?
I went every Sunday because I played the organ.
Okay, so you went every Sunday, but you weren't, it's still kind of amazed to me the synergy that the two of you had, given there's certain areas that you're very pragmatic, and he's very ethereal, kind of, but y'all seem to make it work beautifully. So congratulations. Oh my God, you were married how long?
51 years.
51 years, a long time. Wonderful. Well, can you think of, and I'm not sure whether this applies to you or not, but can you think of what teachings in Theosophy have most affected your life? You had said meditation. Was there anything else that?
I think a lot of what Leadbeater described in terms of and also Dora in their books, and they describe the astral, the etheric double, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual planes, and I've tried to experience those. I definitely can feel them, and I think that has been a major piece, being involved with the different planes of nature.
It maybe when you were doing that piano and that energy was coming out, that you were really, just channeling from another plane. It sounds like that musical experience, which I really appreciate you. That's giving me a lot to think about for sure. I'm sure the other people that listen to this will be maybe on their toes to watch for music energy.
Ed once saw, he was walking to work. This is before I met him, I think. But he was walking to work and he always walked past this particular church. But one day he saw this whole aura around the church. And he thought, that's strange because there's no service now. And then when he walked into the church, the organist was practicing.
Oh,
And it created a musical aura.
wow. That is that's interesting. This is kind of an off the record question, but I mean, do you have any pets?
Used to, when we got married, Ed had two cats and I had one. And my cat taught his cats all the bad habits of how to jump on top of things and how to open drawers and how to open doors. And so she actually taught them how to get on top of the refrigerator. So
Well, it seems like you've got, just looking at you now, I see some plants behind you, almost like you have some pet plants. And I'm just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your plants or your relationships with them.
well, this is Mary's jungle. This my brothers call it Mary's jungle. And I have a lot of plants. But when we were living, when we first moved into the Theosophical Society's building, we used to live on 26th Street, and there was a two-story available room that we decided to move into after John Sellon bought the second building for us. John Sellon was this wonderful support for the New York Lodge. And Ed was at that time running the Quest bookshop. So we moved everything in, but the renovations hadn't finished. So I didn't dare move my plants into the place where we were living. So I moved them into what was then the library, which is now just a meeting room on the 242 building. And one morning I was coming down, and in my usual, I was running late. And so I was going to dash down, get a cup of tea, and then dash out to go to work. And as I'm dashing down the stairs to get to the kitchen where I would make my tea, I heard my plants calling from the building next door. And they kept saying, water us, we need water, we need water. And I said, oh, you can wait till tonight. I mean, I'm talking to my plants, right? I said, oh, you can wait till tonight. And they said, no, no, no. If you wait till tonight, we're going to die. You have to come over now.
Oh,
And I said,
wow.
but I can't. And they said, no, you have to. So we had this discussion as I'm going down the stairs. So I said, okay, I'm going to go over. So I go over next door, and I'm talking to these plants, and I felt the soil, and I said, the soil's wet. You didn't need water. You lied to me. I said, you don't need water at all. You don't even need it tonight. So I left them and I started going back. And as I go back just as I'm going maybe 15 feet from the kitchen where I was going to have my tea, I always had my tea in front of the kitchen window. There was a window there, and the sink. And as I'm walking over, it's a huge crash, a cinder block, big cinder block, like over a foot long, and it comes crashing through that window, lands in the sink. scatters glass through the entire kitchen area, I would have been standing there. I would have been standing there. I would have been covered in cut glass.
If the plants hadn't called you over?
Right. The plants
Oh,
hadn't called me over.
oh, wow, that is really interesting.
So that's the biggest conversation I've had with the plants. They saved my life. They really saved my life. But
Wow.
also, I kind of have a feeling for them. When I walk by Bryant Park, which has these great big trees, I try to feel and talk to the plants through my feet because they talk to each other through their roots. And so I try to communicate with them also that way. And I can feel the peace and the strength that they have.
Amazing. That is amazing. They've done studies now, and it shows that, they can hook plants up to GSRs. And what they found is that when a person's been gone and then they come back in, the plants get excited. They can measure. It's like they know who takes care of them. They know their person. And I do try to tell my plants goodbye when I'm going out. I'll be back, don't worry about it. And so, yeah, uh, I think I heard somebody do a theosophical lecture, and she talked about how when she would go to a new town, that she would always go to a tree and ask it to ground her energy, because our energy is shifted so quickly when we are on a plane and we go far away that we're not acclimated to the energy yet. And I've taken that practice up to go up and just hold a tree and say, thank you for helping me be in this place and grounding us. So another thing in terms of teachers in your life, going back to that idea, I know that you were there during the 9/11 time. Would you tell us what your experience was of that?
I was working at 55 Water, which is just a few blocks from the towers. And I was going to cut something over into production that morning. So I, as usual, was a little late, so I decided to take a taxi down. And if you've ever ridden a taxi in New York City, you know that it's not a calm, pleasant, meditative experience. It's far from it. So I'm in the taxi and we're racing down. This is before 8 o'clock. And there was this incredible peace. It was just overwhelming. You could just feel this peace just coming through your body and just flooding you. And I thought, this is really strange. I'm in a taxi cab. Why am I feeling all this wonderful peace? But I thought, well, I'm going to go with it. I'll just meditate with it. So I meditated in the taxi and just joined in with this feeling of peace that was just flooding the whole area. It wasn't just me. It was just like the whole area. And the I get down to work and I go in the building as usual, and we're there. Our building was about a half hour later was showered with the cinders. When the plane hit the first building, the cinders all just showered on top of our building. And I had a window so I could look out, and I saw these black stones, burnt pieces of concrete coming down outside the window. It wasn't until afterwards that I realized that someone, somewhere, some entity knew, and they were sending us peace to try to prevent this from happening. It didn't prevent it, but it did definitely, try to come through and stop it. And that was, whether it was the masters, whether it was the angel of New York, some entity on some higher plane knew. And I talked to a number of people, and they all talked about that incredible calm that happened in the hour before the planes hit. And actually, that's the reason I joined the ES, because it made me realize there are higher entities that are looking out for us, that are there and trying to help. They do exist, because that was such a real thing, not only for me, but for so many other people as well.
Yeah, well, Kurt Leland says, if we knew what was going on, just with the plants and all the elementals and everything, is that we would not be alive if it wasn't for these unseen and unknown forces, that they are definitely an integral part of humanity. It makes me wonder with these energies coming down, these peaceful energies, do you think that maybe that they just made the attack less destructive? It must have had some kind of effect. Maybe it would have been worse if they hadn't done that.
I don't know whether it would have been worse. It may have helped the plane in Pennsylvania not reach its destination. It may have helped those people, those passengers, um, deal with the situation. It may have given them strength. It didn't stop the planes in New York, but I remember, we talked about should we leave the building because 55 water is, and at that time was huge in the financial. And the question was, would this be the third building that they would hit? It was, and we all thought that. And so several of us decided to leave. And I thought, it would be good to leave because at least I'll be one less person that has to be rescued. That was my thought. I don't want to have to put people through the effort of having to rescue me. So I left and I met up almost immediately with about four of my students, former students. They had all been in classes with me. And we all walked home. And it was very quiet, but yet we were helping people. There was a Chinese couple that was walking the wrong direction. And so one of my students spoke Chinese. And so she said, you can't walk this way, you have to walk that way. And we got them walking in the right direction, away from the devastation. And then another point, there was someone who was having trouble with a wheelchair. They're trying to get it up on the sidewalk, but they couldn't because of the curb. So we all helped get that wheelchair up onto the curb. I mean, there were just little things like that I remember. And someone said, we should all get water. And there was someone selling water, said they bought water for us. And we just walked home. Ed slept through the whole thing. Ed was still asleep when I got home. He didn't know why I'd come home.
Oh, goodness.
So
After this happened, I know that New York was in quite turmoil. And so did you have any PTSD from that experience, or how was that for you in the aftermath of 9/11?
it was very difficult. I never thought about putting PTSD to it, but who knows, maybe. But the interesting thing was there was an edge to that feeling of trauma. In November, early November, we had a dance that we were supposed to perform out on Long Island. And I thought, and I was leading, and this was all volunteer. I was leading a performing dance group. We called them a troupe. And we went out to Long Island, and I kept thinking on the way out, how can I perform? I can't even talk, let alone perform. How can I get on stage and, do a dance and make people happy? Well, we got out there. It was in a park. It was outdoors. And there were children playing and laughing and giggling and adults running around and looking happy. And we had gotten outside that edge of New York City. And once you got outside of it, there was a different feeling. People were already recovering. They weren't having the trauma that we were. And we got up and we smiled and we performed and it was all fun. And, then we went home and as soon as we got back into that edge, it was back into that feeling of trauma and disparage and sadness. I had another experience before that, where I was teaching up in Rhode Island at a corporate site. And while I was teaching, there was this horrible plane crash at JFK, and everyone on board that plane died. And it was this feeling that, oh, that's terrible, that's terrible. All my students were like, oh, that's terrible. But there wasn't this overwhelming, crushing sadness. It was just, oh, that's an awful thing. As I'm driving back into New York City, I get to about, it was in about the 200s. As I'm starting to enter the highway past Harlem, it was this sudden, like I went through a wall, I went through a curtain, and on the other side of the curtain, there was this devastating feeling of sadness, because of the plane. And so there are edges to these feelings of grief.
They're
And
like
when you're
thought
outside,
forms, large thought forms.
yeah, call them thought forms. But yeah,
Yeah, that's an incredible. I can remember riding down the road one time when I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and I was riding by a building that used to be used as a Civil War hospital. And all of a sudden I had this real influx of energy from and the whole experience. And it was like, oh my Lord, the Southern men have never recovered from this Civil War. It is in their DNA. It is in, their defensiveness, they're holding on. And it was just, it came in a second when I came. It's like you said, it was right by where that hospital was. And there was something that's still, there was a presence still there of this destruction and sadness. I think there are a lot of people that go around and try to heal different areas because they sense the trauma and they do ceremonies and music and chants and everything to try to heal this energy.
when the first building was bought, and this was told to me by Ed, who heard it from Dora, but when the first New York City building was bought for the TS, Dora decided that the third floor room was going to be a meditation room, but she felt that there were some negative energies in the room, so she did a whole thing to like heal the negative energies that were in that room.
And did you have the same sense that this needed healing?
When I meditate, I try to send a sense of calm and peace to the whole world. I try to see the world like as almost as the blue globe, the peace and the blue light or white light. And I'm sending that like feeling, a feeling of unity. That's always been part of my meditation.
Well, would you mind just sharing your process of meditation? Like, how do you do, like when you close your eyes, what are your thoughts? How do you work through that and get to the place where you're sending the light and so forth?
I guess the first thing I try to do is feel grounded. I try to feel a strength that goes through my body, through my back and hips and legs into the ground. I try to feel that strength. Sometimes I use breathing to try to focus on the breathing to try to get myself more centered. And then once I get that sense of grounding and my feet are grounded, I try to send an outpouring to the world. Sometimes I think of a particular person to try to send them peace. But you can kind of get a sense once your body is like in tune and aligned, then you can channel energy out. I'm not saying I'm very good at it, but apparently I have actually, just by touching people, helped relieve their pain. Not everyone, but a couple of people have said, just like the 20 seconds that I put my hand on their back, it relieved their back pain. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that. And I'm not saying I do that every time, but I have done it a couple of times and I've sort of surprised myself.
Me too.
Um,
I think it was really funny because I always wanted to be an energy healer, like a really powerful energy healer, like I had heard of other people being. And it was like I had a couple experiences just like that. I put my hand on somebody's back and their back pain that they had been battling for a long time went away. And I thought, ha, I'm an accidental healer. I can't tell when it's going to happen. I didn't have any joy. That definitely leaves my ego out if I touch somebody and they get healed and I had not even a clue it was going to happen. So,
I didn't know until like a week later or so, that.
yeah, because they looked at me and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, da, 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 da. And they said, "Well, I've just been in the hospital." And it's like, and now I don't feel any pain. So yeah, that's funny. So, what role have the lodge meetings played in your life? And have you been to any federation meetings, summer national conventions? Just speak to any of that.
Well, Ed and I always went to the summer national conventions. I went out there this summer to bury Ed, and I did it during the convention so that so many people could attend. Um, we we went, of course, to the School of the Wisdom in 2004, 2005, because Ed was the primary speaker
You mean in IDR?
in Agile, yeah,
Yeah.
Agile, India. And we also went to the uh, World Congress that was in Austria 7 years before this year, because this year I didn't go. I didn't know, Ed was going to go. I didn't know that I was going to be out there burying him. And I didn't even know when the World Congress was. So I had a music thing that conflicted with that. But yeah, I mean, of course, we've been to all kinds of meetings. We've been to the Indralaya a whole bunch of times. We've been to Crotona in California a whole bunch of times. We've been to, oh, there's a place, Pumpkin Hollow, of course, we've been a whole bunch of times, and I was there last weekend.
Oh.
And
Well, so could you tell us, so in going to these meetings, could you talk a little bit about community within the Theosophical Society that you have experienced by attending meetings and retreats and so forth? Could you speak a little of the TS community,
they're very kind.
friendships
They're
and
all
so forth?
searching. They're it's good to be with them. I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, but I'm basically not the talker. Ed was always the talker for me. So I didn't have to worry about talking much.
Well, one word comes to me when I think about the people in the TS, and that is family. And that is that we are a family.
Definitely family. Yes, definitely family.
We have many different beliefs. We don't require anyone to believe anything specific, but we respect and honor each other.
I think I'm fortunate in that I can say the same for my brothers, that I'm not expected to do anything, be anything, know anything, believe anything. We talk and we share ideas. So
Yes, I love that.
I've done a lot of talks for the Theosophical Society. One of them, John Algeo got me to do. Um, it's Theosophical Toys. He said he wanted me to do something with Theosophical Toys, and I said, "What?" So I thought about that. I had a couple of days to figure it out. It was at one of the summer conventions, and he didn't let me know this until after I was out there that he wanted me to do this. So I looked around and I looked at all the toys that different people had on their desks, from the slinkies to the balls that you hit one ball and another
Uh,
ball jumps out, and other things like that. And I put together an hour talk demonstrating theosophy and the theosophical concepts as shown in these toys. I've done it several times, and I have a whole box of theosophical toys. I haven't done that talk for a while, but I think I may get it going again here in New York. Um, I've also done, uh, I do a talk every year on the Earth Day and Theosophy. And I do a talk on science and theosophy. I have, I communicate with some of my friends in Australia who are scientists and theosophists. My brothers who are scientists are not theosophists, so it's not going to help for me to look at connections there, but I do, when I talk with them, confirm whether something is scientifically accurate or not. I try to be as accurate as I can scientifically as well as theosophically. So I talk about some of the things that I see as connections, but I don't say that this is absolute. I've
Well,
done.
could you give me an example of a theosophical toy? The principle of the toy.
Well, that when you have like a whole bunch of balls hanging and you take the one ball and you like hit it, the two middle balls don't move, but the ball on the other end jumps out. So here you have these balls together, and you take this ball and you hit that, you let it go and it bounces against here. Only that ball goes out. In other words, that's like karma. Karma is action, reaction. So the karma of this ball comes, but it doesn't affect these two middle balls. It only affects the one on the end. It only affects the one it's supposed to affect. So the karma passes through these middle balls. So I look at that in terms of how karma can affect or not affect us. So, and also that this ball on the other end goes out. And then when this ball comes back in, what happens? It bounces against these and that first one comes out. And so there's your action has affected something in the universe, and then that action will come back and get you.
Oh, wow.
So action, reaction. The slinky, that you can take it and you can go downstairs. You can take your slinky, and each time it turns over and over and over to go down the stairs. I would set up a bunch of boxes and get the slinky to go down the boxes. And this is your cycles. So the cycle, coming around and coming around and coming around. So talk about that in terms of cycles.
That's very neat, very neat.
Another interesting thing is that, and this is true in science, science things, we do not evolve gradually. We evolve in jumps. I mean, if you look at the big picture, you can say, okay, that was a gradual evolution. But no, at one point there was no eye, there was no eyeball, and then there was an eyeball. It didn't gradually build up and say, okay, we've got a lens and a mucus and a kind of cornea and a retina. It evolved as a jump, and then nothing happened. So evolution tends to be very stable, and then there's something happens, and then it tends to be stable, and something happens. And you can take this slinky also, it's coming down, and suddenly it turns over. And then it comes down, and suddenly it turns over. So that this, you can also look at that in terms of maybe evolution. I know this is a stretch, but it's been a while since I've done these talks.
Oh, I think that, that's perfect about how it jumps. I've actually heard that there was 200,000 years ago, there was a big jump that can't be explained by evolution, because all of a sudden it was like we were, I don't know, some kind of before you were here, before Homo sapiens, and then all of a sudden there was this big jump, and all of a sudden the brain is bigger, we have more logical ability, we can have more abilities, mental abilities and so forth, and that it can't be explained. But there's like you're saying, I think it's like evolution jump, evolution jump, evolution jump. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's stable, and then there's a jump. Something evolves, but it doesn't. It's if you think about like a joke, when you listen to a joke, all of a sudden you get the joke. You didn't gradually get the joke. You don't say, "Oh, that's so funny." You say, "Oh, that's so funny." It's an aha moment. It's
Right.
a sudden. There was a not knowing, and then there's a knowing,
Okay.
and
And
then you stay on that level of knowing, and suddenly something else happens, and there's another knowing. You
okay.
don't learn things. You don't learn things gradually. You learn things in jumps, in aha moments.
Okay, well, we're going to switch again, and I'm just going to ask you, have there been any theosophical books that have really touched you, or any other spiritual books that made a difference? You mentioned that you're more of an experiential person than, reading the facts, but have there been any books that maybe enlivened you or pedaled you along the way?
Well, one of the first books, and I haven't looked at this for decades, was Shirley Nicholson's Ancient Wisdom, Modern Insight. And that, I remember, got me thinking along the scientific lines. Um, Dora's, of course, Dora's book, Christmas of the Angels, and other things. C.W. Wells' books, because C.W. Wells he tended to confirm, that's not the right word. He tended to make sure that anything he wrote down was also seen by 4 other clairvoyants, if I recall correctly. So it wasn't just his seeing something, it was confirmed by other clairvoyants as well before he would write it down. So his hidden side of things was meaningful to me. Believe it or not, H.P.B's Key to Theosophy was one of the early books that I read, and it meant a lot as well. So those are some of the books that I've read that meant a lot to me.
I just want to make that in case anybody's listening, they don't know who CWL is. That's Leadbeater that she's talking about, just so you'll know who that was. If you were to meet a stranger and they came to
Oh,
you.
can I also add Ed's books?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, sure, please.
Ed's books and Ed's writing, because of course I read all of that, and edited it, and the talks he gave, and we would talk about things as well. So
you became a part of those books as you edited them and worked with them. And
the articles and the talks that he gave, I mean, I put together PowerPoints and I would try to understand what he was meaning by what he would say, and then I would try to put an appropriate graphic or picture in that matched what I felt he was saying.
so there was a lot of learning involved for you in that process.
Yeah.
On both sides, you learned a lot about how to make PowerPoint presentations, and you learned a lot about the content of Theosophy.
Believe it or not, I was the one that switched the slides.
Oh, okay. I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, I can remember Ed was not really technically oriented. But he was a great comedian as well, and dancer. So I was going to ask you, if you met somebody that just came off the street and they were on a spiritual journey and they said, I know you've been involved in Theosophy. What is that? And what would you say to them?
I have a horrible time answering that question. I never answer it right. I think I try to come up with a bunch of words that I'll say, and then when someone actually asks me, they all go out the window.
Deer in the headlights syndrome, huh? Well, we won't ask you that then if you don't want. If you don't want.
Well, I like the second object. If I can remember if I can think clearly enough, I mentioned the second object, a comparative study of science, religion, and philosophy, which is a comparative study. It's not you believe in any one of these things. It's not a belief system. So I say it's not a belief system. It's a comparative study. And then I try to remember that, oh, there is a teaching, but you don't have to accept it.
I do. I like that as a comparative study. So is there anything else that you might want to tell us that has happened in your life that you think might be of interest here, fit in here? Have I covered all the major points?
Probably.
Okay.
There was an interesting thing, though, that happened. Shirley Nicholson's husband, Bill Nicholson, reminded me a lot of my dad. In a sense, they were both very shy and they were both very introspective. And I remember I had this dream, and in the dream, I'm seeing my dad in a coffin. And I said, but Dad, you died years ago. Why am I seeing you now in a coffin? What happened? And the next day I got a call that Bill Nicholson had died.
Interesting.
So I've had a few similar things, but that was a pretty powerful one. you know, premonitions of things that would happen. I remember also looking out the window once, again in a dream, and I was looking out the window, and the building across the street was on fire. It was burning up like crazy. This is when we still lived on 26th Street. And I woke up and I said, Ed, there's going to be a fire. About 3 days later, the building next door went up in flames, and the flames were reflected in the glass of the window across the street.
And that's what you
I
saw.
got the wrong building. I got the fire, but I got the wrong building because I saw the reflection in my dream, not the actual fire. So I've had a few things like that. Not recently.
I think, I don't know, but a lot of older people I talk to talk about things that when we were younger, there were a lot more manifestations, demonstrations, psychic ability, and so forth. And I've heard other people say that as well. It's certainly been true for me.
So we lose that ability when we get old.
I don't know whether we lose the ability. Some people say once you've had the demonstrations, the universe is trying to say this is really real, and then we've gotten the lesson that we need to know that there's much more to us than our physical reality. And that way we can focus on the things that really matter, which are kindness, compassion, love, service, those things, rather than trying to figure out whether the occult has reality in our lives or not. We've been told that it does, we have the experience that it does, and now let's live the ordinary life in an extraordinary way and be a channel for good. And so that's the explanation I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, because I kind of wondered whether I was losing my ability or something. I mean, these are
Yeah,
not things that I focus on. These were just things that just came to me, you know?
yeah, I got you. Yeah, but it's like we don't need the demonstrations it's like the universe is saying, look, we're going to give you this and this and this and this and this, and this gives you a background, solid ground to stand on with your beliefs in theosophy or whatever kind of discipline that you're studying. This is giving you solid ground. Now that the foundation is laid, then your life will be built in day to day and the ordinary experiences and generosity and kindness. And then, of course, with that, I mean, I know that there are people that have remained very psychic all the way until their last days, but they were more professional at this, using it every day on purpose.
Not me, not me.
Yeah, right.
I try to get a rapport with my students. I try to have them all trust each other. I try to have them share ideas. I try to have them ask leading questions as opposed to saying you were wrong or you forgot that, but rather to say a leading question so that they can have people draw the information out of their own mind instead of just being told, oh, it's a typing lesson, change this.
Okay, so when you say students, you're not talking about then the students that you have in your classrooms when you're teaching computer science.
I'm talking about my computer science students,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
My computer science students, because I really try to have them trust each other. I mean, they're writing applications that are affecting sometimes global applications that are affecting the globe. And I want them to write something that works and that's, dependable. I mean, if you're writing an application for an airline, you want to make sure that plane stays in the air. We,
For sure.
so my students are often government or big financial corporations, sometimes hospitals, so what they do can affect other people's lives, not just in a financial way, but, physically as well. So I want them to be trusting. I want them to be a team. I want them to work together. I want them to be aware of how they can help other people. So I do that with the exercises that I give them. And I reward them for sharing an error. Like I'll say, that is a magnificent error that you have. Let's all see if we can figure it out. And then I also have these things which I call stump the instructor. I said, well, you really did try to stump the instructor, and this time you succeeded for a few minutes. So,
Oh.
I reward them even for finding my errors. And I say, if I say something that's not right, you need to tell me. Don't just let it go by. We all need to work together on this. Nobody's perfect, certainly not me. So it's that sort of thing where I reward them. And when I used to teach in person, now I teach mostly remotely, like with Zoom or something like what we're doing. But when I taught in person, I would always have a whole box of treats, cookies, candy, little toys for people that were couldn't eat chocolate or something. And anytime somebody found an error in my material or heard me say something that was wrong, I rewarded them. And one time, one of the students came up to me afterwards and he said, I found an error back on page such and such in your book. I said, well, that was this morning. Why didn't you tell me this morning? And he said, I wasn't hungry then.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
so he got his cookies.
Well, it sounds like you really enjoy being a teacher, and then that's really part of your dharma. Yes. Well, is there anything else before we close that you would like to share in closing?
I think that's all I can think of.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Mary, and I will tell you that when you were telling certain stories about energy or about clairvoyance, I could feel the energy that you were talking about, and it was a wonderful experience. And so not only when we live these experiences do they bring, an energetic completeness or wholeness or create a sacred moment, but in recounting these experiences, I think that we can uplift other people as you did for me today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you sometimes in the future.